Welcome on Democracy with FP Wellman. I am your host, Fred Wellman. Oh my God, it's been a crazy week in the country. We had an off-year election this week, which went incredibly well in spite of the doom and gloom squad saying it wouldn't. A lot of stuff going on in Washington, D.C. Mike Johnson's flown off to Paris to give a speech instead of actually keeping the government running. There's so much to talk about. I got the perfect guest to do with, so let's get on with the show. Welcome. As I mentioned previously, I am Fred Wellman, your host of On Democracy with FP Wellman, right here on the Midas Touch Network or wherever you get your podcast source. I hope you'll like, subscribe, click. And I tell you up front now, leave a remark, leave a comment on the video. I love saying hi to y'all. If I'm up on Friday night, we can talk. It'll be great. In the meantime, man, it was really a great week for Democrats. I mean, I keep telling you guys that we are winning. And people keep doubting me, but this was an election that was an undoubtable repudiation of much of the Republican agenda, from reproductive freedom to the incorrectly named parents' right movement, all saw losses. And what it is, the key was organized opponents won big in a lot of important places. And it was funny, somebody on Twitter the other day, or X, what do you want to call it today, was saying, oh, well, you know, Jamie Harrison needs to do more. I said, dude, Jamie Harrison did a lot. A lot of this victory in Virginia especially was because they had invested heavily. So the Democratic Party is fighting back. A great week. But, you know, I think it's time to start looking at the general election and what we can expect. It's common knowledge that Trump is far and away the likely GOP nominee. But we can't ignore the many, many legal challenges he faces. Right now, his entire family has testified in New York, where he faces a really very real chance of his business being dismembered completely. Now, on top of the fact he has 4 indictments with 91 charges across the country. So there's a lot going on that goes into this. And I've been wanting to get this guy on the show for a while. So I'm thrilled to have. We met in D.C., I think last year, right, Shan? So Shanlon Wu, he's a regular CNN NPR legal analyst, former federal prosecutor, served in the Clinton administration as Counsel to Attorney General Janet Reno. Now, nationally known criminal defense lawyer, appears regularly on media, and also here on the Midas Touch Network. Shan, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, good to be here, Fred. Glad we made it work.
Yeah, me too. It's great. I love the front seat video. It's great to have you. Nothing better than a guest who's shoehorning us in on Friday. So I want to start off. I did a video last night for the Midas Touch Network about this Project 2025. I'm sure you saw the story from the Washington Post talking about, or I think the New York Times did this one, about how he said in another interview, as a matter of fact, Trump is saying very clearly that if he gets elected, he is going to put the DOJ and hire lawyers that think like him and go after his opponents. I mean, this is some scary stuff, and the legalities of it kind of scare me. And can you put that in perspective for us, like just how crazy this is, the idea of essentially truly weaponizing DOJ and others?
Yeah, you know, a saying I like to go back to, because it's so often misinterpreted, is that Shakespeare quote, you know, first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers, which people usually think of as, you know, a lawyer-hating joke. Actually, what it is an anti-authoritarianism line, because the idea is when you wipe out the lawyers, you wipe out the rule of law. And that's really what he wants to do. And I think there are kind of two sides to that. The first is, obviously, he's just trying to appeal politically to his base, you know, deep state, DOJ is corrupt, I'm going to fix all that. The other piece of it is simply his love of being a strong man and authoritarianism as his guiding, you know, navigation standard. And that's classic. I mean, what you want to do is you want to get rid of any kind of objective rule of law, and of course, you know, put in your own people, whether they're going to be kind of like authoritarian, you know, like a strike squad, Gestapo, that sort of thing. I like to analogize his notion of law enforcement and even the Secret Service to him to be like a Praetorian Guard. They can just be completely personally loyal to him. And when you put in your own AG, you know, at DOJ, the way he tried to do, as he tried to overturn the election, that will be a big help for him. And that's very, very dangerous. And the people around him are smart enough to understand it's not just appointing a favorable attorney general. I mean, arguably, you had that in Bill Barr. Yeah. And it still didn't quite work. What you have to do is you have to be able to get rid of the career people. And at DOJ, like many other big agencies, it's the career folks that supply the conscience and supply the history, the guardrails of the group. So they understand they need to wipe all that out to do what they want.
Yeah, which is the base of the Schedule F thing, right? Which is going in
Right.
and truly doing, gutting out these agencies, internet and intelligence agencies and others to get rid of people who aren't loyalists to the Trump agenda or the Republican agenda in this case.
Absolutely. And that's really, I really doubt that Trump understands that concept. He just feels that he should be able to hire and fire people as he will. So it's folks who are smarter than that, who are more clever, who are looking at, this is how we actually get rid of the real guardrails in the situation.
Yeah, I mean, Heritage has brought together, 75 organizations, I believe, is this Project 2025, funded by $22 million in dark money. And they're supposedly hiring. They already got a list of vetted people who are going to be the takeover. So it's some really scary stuff when you dig into it, and it's giving people a lot of fear of the misuse of our judicial system, which is what the accusation is. And that transitions to a nice place, as I mentioned in the opening, the New York civil case. I don't know if you saw it, but Elise Stefanik apparently has filed a ethics complaint against Judge Engeron because of his courtroom behavior. I mean, it's a bit of a travesty, obviously. Where's that going to go, you think?
I don't think that's going to go any place.
Yeah.
And frankly, having been in a lot of courtrooms, a lot of very, shall we say, prima donna judges, he doesn't fall into that category. No. He has a reputation in New York State as being, a little bit ornery, and that often happens with judges when they've been on the bench for a long time. But I felt that he's been remarkably restrained, especially given the absolutely historically unprecedented antics of Trump. I mean, everyone talks about it's such a historical significance, former presidents on the stand. I mean, what's really historical about it is no defendant in their right mind is going to behave that way.
Yeah.
And no lawyer in their right mind is going to behave that way unless they're trying to simply disrupt the trial, seek a mistrial. Obviously they don't want to do this, but you want to argue that your client's mentally unfit to stand trial because he can't control himself. It's just remarkable what they're doing. And I think they're doing it to kind of goad Engeron into making more sort of pissed off statements, and they'd have an argument on appeal that, this guy's biased, he just didn't like us, that's why he was ruling this way. And I think they really failed. I think he quite easily just stayed in his lane.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting, the tail end of Trump's testimony. Engeron was much quieter, and kind of like the AG lawyer did the same thing of sort of like, just let him talk himself out. And the testimony actually took less time because they didn't give him anything to really focus on in terms of arguments. So I think that worked out very well for him.
Yeah, I saw your piece on that. That was a great way to put it. It's like, again, it's we say that a lot. When your enemy is, making a mistake, just let him. You know what I mean? And the thing about Trump is he can't control himself. His ego is too big. I think he literally didn't he essentially admit to the whole point of this thing, which he has different numbers he uses for different things. I mean, it's essentially the whole base of the case, right?
Right, absolutely, and like you're saying about his ego, it goes back to his notion of being, the man in charge, whether it's of a small family company or of the country. His point is, I know better than anyone else. I get to do what I want, and this was what I was doing. With no concept that that's basically what you're being accused of in that trial. So you are making those admissions.
Wow, it's just great. Now, explain what maybe a lot of my viewers may not understand what happens. So it's already been decided they lied, right? This is essentially the penalty phase, is my understanding. What could be really the outcome of this? I mean, what's a realistic expectation of what may be the outcome of this if the judge rules against him?
Yeah, before we got to this penalty phase, before we got to Trump testifying, I think a realistic expectation to me is they probably get hit with pretty close to the entire fine that was being asked for, the $250 million. I was not so sure that the judge would impose what's called a corporate death penalty, meaning you can't do business in New York anymore, because that's pretty harsh, and it's, to me, it'd be more reasonable to say, basically disgorge, profits that you've made. That's probably much more than $250K, but that would be the punishment. But I have to say, after Trump's performance, and particularly with this issue of how they've been attacking the judge's law clerk, which is really just way, way out of line, that I think his testimony, the fact that Eric, Don Jr., and Ivanka, who was much more controlled in her testimony, everybody distances themselves and uses the same line, which is, we didn't really have anything to do with it. Let's blame the accountants. And to some extent, they're saying, look, it's Dad's personal finances. We don't have anything to do with that. We don't know if he, put out X or Y about his financial statements. When you combine that with Trump's perspective and testimony on the stand, I actually think the judge may impose that ultimate penalty for them in New York, which is to say you can't do business here again because nobody can trust your books. Nobody can trust the assertions that you're making.
Right, and they've made that clear that they have no intention of changing too. I think there's no remorse or any acknowledgement there was a mistake made. So yeah, it does make a lot of sense to me what you're saying, because they have shown no interest whatsoever in the truth or any admission of failing. And of course, they still keep walking out of the courtroom saying we're going to win this thing. It's like, you already lost, bro. It's really
exactly.
And obviously, everything they do is for PRs, for political fundraising. They'll make the money. And so, what does that mean then? That death penalty? How does that translate? Because you see people saying, "Well, he'll lose Mar-a-Lago, he'll lose Trump Tower." What does that death penalty mean, and how does that translate to the real world?
They'll have to probably appoint some kind of a special master to figure out how they close down those businesses. I mean, they're complex in terms of what are the actual assets.
Right.
What does it mean you can't run them anymore? There's a question of, can you set up a new company in Florida, let's say, and kind of like run the same assets from there? So there's a lot to kind of detangle once that happens. But obviously, it'll be a huge problem for them having to dismantle or reconstruct the entire setup for themselves. And I think that's what really where you're going to see some devil in the details there. I think ultimately here, you might even see this, I'll venture, that he may ultimately turn against his lawyers because, like you were saying, it's all PR to them. And that's fine, doing that on the steps of the courthouse, say what you want, just like your client can. But inside the courtroom, that is not a good approach for them to have taken. I mean, the approach they should have taken is, look, mistakes were made, but they were honest mistakes. Maybe we weren't paying enough attention. Maybe we trusted too much. But we're not disputing that there's error here. Right. But it's just that we weren't really trying to do something wrong. And if they'd taken that tactic, I think you get a little bit more sympathy from the fact finder, in this case, the court. But as you're saying, the approach they've taken, as usual, PR is no different than legal arguments to them. I just think that's going to result in a very bad ending for them.
Yeah, and they don't do humble appreciation of anything, right? They'll never admit they're wrong. So, well, that's really interesting. I'm really glad you just explained it to me. You did a piece that I thought was fascinating, and it does do it more away from the courtroom world, but also the law. And you've been really because obviously your practice law is a lot on campus, on student law, student issues, the cancel culture stuff, and it's pretty interesting. And it is a hot topic right now. The free speech. Obviously, we're in the middle of a very really crazy moment, right? Between a lot of anti-Semitism, also a lot of Islamophobia, the damage being done to our national discourse and to everything from the Hamas-Israel war. And you had a great piece talking about how these billionaires are trying to force students essentially break their will or break their free speech. I mean, where is that going? And I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think there are two sides to that, which is what we usually think about in terms of the right wing, if you're a liberal, kind of using their wealth to impose their notions of what is okay to talk about. Things they don't like become hate speech. And now for the first time, we're kind of seeing it more obviously on the liberal side. It's not a question, actually, to me, of the content of the speech. It's a question of very rich, very powerful people feel that they have the right to leverage that wealth and privilege into controlling speech. They may not think of it that way, and I think it's very fascinating. The theme is always going to be not that they're trying to infringe speech, but the speech that they don't like becomes hate speech of some kind. And they always turn it that way. So what you're seeing with the universities and the Hamas-Israel conflict is these universities already have codes about hate speech, harassment. I mean, I have a lot of clients who I'm defending against things like that. Yeah. They don't really need somebody like Bill Ackerman telling them, okay, you better take this stand, you better do this, you better do that. What they should have done, if I were advising them, is come out very quickly. I'm not sure why they were dilly-dallying so long. Come out really quickly and hard, to say this is a horrible attack. We condemn any kind of violence. We condemn any kind of hate. And everybody calm down. Make sure you don't turn on each other over this. But then when people do turn on each other, as bound to happen in a very impassioned situation, then from the campus point of view, you kind of prosecute it. What they do is if someone, draws something, if they rip down things, if they're chanting things, then there are violations that they could enforce. But they face a real moment here, Fred, where if these big donors are saying, hey, we're going to band together and yank your donations if you don't do X, that's a real moment for them to shine and say, look, what we're doing is to protect our students, protect their safety, and protect their minds. We want to have discourse, and we're not going to bend to this kind of pressure. But that's a tough stand, but it would be a courageous stand.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hot time too, and that's with the heat of the passions of the moment. This is real world stuff. People are dying, and the passions are. But you're right. A lot of them on both sides are getting extremely extreme, and there's no way to avoid that. And I've been on those campuses in hot times, and it's a tough battle to wade into. But you're absolutely right. With that, I'm going to take a break. We have some great sponsors this week. I would love to hear from all those guys. Hey, look, everyone knows how annoying cheap razors are. The cuts, the irritation, the frustration, and don't get me started on subscription razor services. The headaches they can cause if they show up on your doorstep. That's why you got to meet Henson Shaving. Henson Shaving is a family-owned aerospace parts manufacturer that's made parts of the ISS and the Mars rover, and now they're bringing precision engineering to your shaving experience. And I'm an old pilot, so I love me some aerospace manufacturing, let me tell you. Now, razor blades are like diving boards. The longer the board, the more wobble. The more wobble, the more nicks, cuts, and scrapes. A bad shave isn't a blade problem, it's an extension problem. By using aerospace-grade CNC machines, Henson makes metal razors that extend just 0.0013 inches, which is less than the width of a hair. That means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave. It gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream and makes clogging virtually impossible. So seriously, Henson Shaving wants the best razor, not the best razor business. That means no plastic, no subscriptions, no proprietary blades, and no planned obsolescence. The Henson razor works with standard dual-edged razor blades to give you that old-school shave, like me, with the benefits of new-school tech. So once you own a Henson razor, it's only about $3 to $5 per year to replace the blades. So I'll tell you, I don't shave often, obviously, but my first shave with the Henson razor was incredibly refreshing. The design is sleek and the durability is top notch. The Henson razor is truly so much better than your run-of-the-mill razor, and it's the quote-unquote traditional razor brand that you're used to. Now, the affordability factor is absolutely game-changing. No more wasting your money on expensive blades. With Henson Shaving, you can get like a year of blades for around $5. So it's time to say no to subscriptions, say yes to a razor that's lasts you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/Fred to pick the razor for you and use code FRED, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. 2 years of blades. So that's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/Fred and use code FRED when you're there. Check them out. Someone told me there are science-backed ingredients that could help me feel 15 years younger in just a matter of months. I wouldn't have believed it. Well, then I tried Qualia Senolytics. As we age, everyone accumulates senescent cells in their body. Senescent cells cause symptoms of aging, such as aches and pains, slow workout recoveries, sluggish mental and physical energy that I know so well, all associated with that middle-aged feeling. Now, also known as zombie cells, they're old and worn out and serving a no useful function for your health anymore, but they're taking up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. Much like pruning the yellow and dead leaves and plants in my garden, Qualia Senolytic removes those worn out senescent cells to allow for the rest of them to thrive in your body. You take it just 2 days a month. The formula is non-GMO, vegan, as well as gluten-free, and the ingredients are meant to complement one another, factoring in the combined effect of all the ingredients together. But best of all, on top of all that, you have a 100-day money-back guarantee. And since taking Qualia Senolytics, I have had higher energy levels. I feel 15 years younger, more productive, enthusiastic in life. Not to mention, importantly for me, less aches and pains. Now, resist aging at the cellular level. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to neurohacker.com/Fred for up to $100 off, and then use code FRED at checkout for an additional 15% off. That's neurohacker.com/Fred for an extra 15% off of your purchase. And man, thanks Neurohacker for sponsoring our show. Good to be back. So thanks so much. Yeah, what you're doing there is a great conversation, but let's take it back to DC, I think, which is where you're at too. There's a lot going on with the Supreme Court, right? Between the idea of imposing an ethics code, the pushback from Scalia and others, they don't want an ethics code put in them, to the attempts to find out how Supreme Court judges have been purchased by rich people like Harlan Crow. I don't know if you saw it, but of course the Senate Judiciary, they were going to subpoena these gentlemen. I think it was Harlan Crow and other. And Leonard Leo, right? And then instead, the Republicans put in 60 different or 90 different amendments, flood the zone with amendments that can't be worked through in time. So they've actually dropped the idea of subpoenaing. Where does this stand, and where do you see this going as far as the Senate trying to at least impose some sort of rules around the Supreme Court when so many people, all of us, look, there's very few people left who don't believe our Supreme Court has been compromised in some way with the influence of these billionaires.
Yeah, this is a moment, I think, where Congress really has to stand up for itself and have some spine on both sides of the aisle, because over the years, the Supreme Court has really emerged as the dominant branch of government. And I don't think that's what was obviously intended. Yeah. A lot of that is by deferring to these 9 unelected people, you get to kind of punt and say, hey, it wasn't us legislators, it wasn't us, the executive branch, it was the court decided this. And politically, that gives people good cover. But realistically, what it's done is it has turned them into the final arbiters of not just law and constitutionality, but you kind of shoehorn everything under that now. So they're in the position of making all the decisions about, school curriculums, whether people wear masks, OSHA's safety guidelines, what can the CDC do? These are a group of judges. They are not massive content experts across the board in all guises of life. Right. So that's really got to stop. And so I don't think they should have withdrawn those subpoenas. I understand the cleverness of what the Republicans did, but they really need to stand up and try to insist. They have the purse strings, after all. Right. They need to insist that there is a code of ethics. It's just preposterous that the highest court in the land is the only court that has no accountability, has no code of ethics. And on the executive branch side, I have to say, I have a lot of respect for Merrick Garland. I think he's a very honorable man. But I think there needs to be some more fire there. And they should open an investigation into very precisely the honesty of the financial disclosures that were made. And sure, Thomas, Alito, others can argue to DOJ that, look, this was fuzzy. We didn't have to do this because of blankety blank, versus Alito writing editorials in the Wall Street Journal describing it. But there should be some integrity to that, not just letting them blab about it and taking their word for it.
Yeah, again, we all grew up. Schoolhouse Rock, right? Checks and balances. This is a schoolhouse. Right. This is, I call these Schoolhouse Rock issues, right? We were growing up with the basic tenets of our government, which is the checks and balances. And it's a Schoolhouse Rock issue. If it just seems like you said, 2 of the branches have decided not to do their part of the checks and balances beyond appointing these people, and then from then on, they're freewheeling to do what they wish. And clearly, they feel that way. Obviously, Judge Thomas and these others feel like they're Alito, that they are above the law. There's no way to argue otherwise, that they don't believe the rules apply to them in the same as the others. It's baffling to me that people of ethics who are on the highest court can look in the mirror and say that, no, these rules don't apply to us as they do others. Is there movement amongst them? Because I have heard rumors that, Ketanji Brown and others like, no, I'll sign that shit. Is there enough pressure within the liberal court, or is it? I don't really understand the nuances of those relationships, of course.
I think that particularly the newer justices, if you talk to them one by one, they'd probably all say, oh, yeah, we actually do abide by an ethics code. I would sign something like that. But I think it's interesting because they have a built-in bias, too. Talking about the way that we were raised with the Schoolhouse Rock, they've also been raised with this notion that the independence of the judiciary is somehow now tied into the idea that no one can look at them.
Right.
And that's not really true. I mean, it's true to the extent that, you don't want people like claiming, oh, if you don't vote my way, I'm going to go dig into your taxes, a la Nixon.
$1 salary, right?
Right, yeah. But that doesn't mean that there can't be accountability, that you don't have to disclose anything. So I think part of the problem of the culture within the court is, however well-intentioned they may be, they themselves don't even understand what the kind of institutional problem there is for them being there. And that's why people outside of the court have to come in and impose that accountability on them and impose that ethical discipline on them, really.
I mean, it's the ultimate bubble, isn't it? I mean, I served in the Army for 22 years. I actually, the latter part of my career was spent working with general officers, and when a guy's been a general, like say like David Petraeus, by the time they retire, they've been a general for 15 years or so. I mean, it's a long time, and you get within a bubble at a certain point. There is a bubble that's created around people at that level in life. I saw it in the military. I can't imagine what it must be like to be a Supreme Court justice, one of 9 of the most powerful judicial people in the country, if not the world, right? And I think that bubble, I just wonder sometimes how much the bubble has affected them, especially, I mean, how long has Thomas been there? I mean, my God, 30, 40 years? I mean, it's insane.
Oh, yeah. I think you're exactly right. I think that bubble changes people. It's also interesting, of course, for folks, who may have come from a more classically privileged background, bubble's a lot longer than since they became a federal judge.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It predates that, so it gets even worse,
right.
once they get that job.
Right, that's a really good point. We've had some more working class judiciary lately. It seems like so. We get. It's a really good point too. It's a very good point. I'd be remiss if I don't let you drive off without talking about impeachment. I'm doing air quotes for those who are listening. The impeachment. As we know, I don't know if you saw this article. There was an article today in the Post, I believe, that talking about how when Speaker Johnson met with the moderate members of the Republican candidate, which, by the way, I should do air quotes on that, the moderate members, because that's also bullshit. But the moderate members, he actually said apparently out loud that now that Biden's polls are sort of down, that the political imperative for the impeachment is not as powerful. However, Comer has issued subpoenas for Hunter Biden and James Biden in this feckless pursuit. Where do we stand on that? And what does this next phase mean when they're actually trying to issue subpoenas?
Well, I think just to go on the political front for one sec, like you were saying, I actually think if I were in Biden's camp, I'd be welcoming them opening that inquiry and serving the subpoenas, because it would probably help them in the polls. I mean, much taking a page from Trump's playbook.
Yeah.
I mean, their next step is they can issue the subpoenas, and then there's going to be a question of whether people are going to fight the subpoenas. And that's, again, going to be a tactical question, because you can certainly fight them. We've seen that. And then it gets litigated and it gets delayed. It gets drawn out to see whether or not you actually have to show up or not. And so that's one tactic. The other tactic is simply to say, fine, I honor subpoenas. I'm not going to quibble about it. I'll show up, ask your questions. And judging from the performance so far, they're not going to have very good questions, and they're not really going to get anything. I mean, it's all sort of promising what they're going to uncover about the President Biden's corruption, and the stuff they've come up with so far, it's really less than zero. I mean, it's hard for them to even explain how they're trying to connect the dots. When you listen to some of them answer, why they think there's some relationship to Hunter Biden having had one bank account which someone else used in the same bank. It's just ridiculous. They have nothing there. So I think it's just a tactical question, ultimately a political question. Do these folks want to challenge the subpoenas, or do they just want to show up and say, hey, I'm honoring the system, and ask away?
Right. And the other part, of course, that has been, it's not an official impeachment inquiry. Therefore, there are certain rules, there are certain things they can't do, which has been a point that a lot of folks have made, that a lot of these subpoenas can be ignored a lot easier because this isn't an official impeachment inquiry. And then, of course, the Democrats have done a brilliant job of of being, I wouldn't say defense attorneys in this case, but punching holes in their arguments so exquisitely well. I mean, the members of the judiciary especially are very, very good, and the oversight committee both have been excellent, because that is the danger that I think that it seems like Comer and Jim Jordan keep forgetting, is that there's also about 2/3 of that committee, or whatever, half that committee is Democrats, and they're very, very smart Democrats, and they keep making fools of these guys and punching holes in their argument. They have a worthy opponent who is aware of just how ridiculous this is, right?
Yeah, and I also think, this is venturing and putting on my political analyst hat, but the reason that they're so vulnerable to that is they're actually still playing as usual, to their base, which is perhaps the ever shrinking one. But all those posturing moves that they make, it's not even to convince their folks across the aisle, their opponents, that, yeah, we ought to do this. They actually, in some ways, think they'll just benefit from it when they say, we tried to do this, but we were stopped. And that's
Right.
what they're all trying to campaign on. And, maybe that'll work for their campaigns and they won't get primaried, but ultimately it certainly isn't contributing anything towards good governance.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the government's about to shut down. They're wasting their time on this. They're wasting their time on reducing salaries to $1, as I mentioned previously. I mean, it is feckless at best. And the issues they're running on, as we saw this last week, as I mentioned at the top of the show, aren't working, right? They really thought they had they really thought they had the key with this. I was really interested in the Virginia results, with Youngkin saying this 15-week ban would be the key. A lot of them were really piling on that, saying, "Well, this is the winner right here. We're not really banning. You're still going to have 15 weeks," and it looks like apparently that was completely obliterated in this. So the political ramifications are still being felt because they don't understand the legal ramifications of what people feel, I think.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. And, I think to the average person, when you hear that they're latching onto this 15-week thing, it just seems so obvious that they're trying to use that as like, a magic slogan to suddenly use to escape what they had worked for such a long time to get. I mean, a lot of people use this analogy, but, it's the dog chasing the car and then not knowing what to do when they catch up to the car. And really, it's they catch up to the car and the car runs them over. so that's what's really happening here.
Yeah. Well, I say it a lot is women don't get a break. A lot of the political pundits, I'm sure you heard it in DC and you see it on CNN, is saying, well, there is this belief, this foolish belief that, like most issues, the further we got away from the Dobbs decision, the more the anger would grow down. But I keep pointing out when I talk that women don't get a vote. Women don't get a choice in avoiding the idea of reproductive rights. They wake up every day and monitoring their reproductive system. They worry about getting pregnant every time they sleep. They have intercourse with someone. These are real issues for women. They have to deal with every single day, no matter how long from Dobbs it was. Women don't get a break from this issue, and I think they've really underestimated the length of that pain, because a lot of folks approach this just like any other Supreme Court decision or any other political decision. I think that's one they still don't get it, as obviously as Ohio shows. They really don't get how angry people are.
Yep, I think that's right, and that sort of passion, that sort of anger, the everyday reality of what women deal with, that's not solved because some GOP politician latches onto the phrase, it's 15 weeks.
Right. It
doesn't change a damn thing.
Right. Right. Well, this is great. Well, I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate you joining. Where can people find you, other than as well, obviously on CNN, but where can they find you online and hunt you down?
Well, you can hunt me down on Twitter at Shanlon Wu. That's the best place. That's the one piece of social media that, I really try to attend to, and I try to answer folks a lot as well. So happy to find you there.
Let me get you on Threads too. It's booming right now, so I'm having a good time on Threads. It's not as angry all the time. And the engagement's great too.
Check that out.
Yeah, I'm on there. Might as well. I'm really enjoying Threads. So really appreciate Shan. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're busy. Obviously, you're out and about. So thanks for joining us on Friday afternoon, and I appreciate all you do. Lomi is the only appliance that prevents food waste from stinking up your kitchen and polluting the planet. Now that I've invested in a Lomi, it's changed the way I deal with my food waste. Lomi is the biggest innovation in the modern day kitchen since the dishwasher. It's helped me turn my home into a climate solution. And now I can transform my organic waste into nutrient-rich Lomi earth I can feed to my plants, lawn, or garden instead of sending it to the landfill. I can help the environment and make my life easier. In just 4 hours, Lomi transforms almost anything you eat into nutrient-rich plant food at the push of a button. It's smart, simple food recycling that fits my space perfectly. You can cut the chore of doing the trash in half and eliminate bugs and odors in your kitchen. And here's a bonus. You get to feed your lawn and garden with an all-natural fertilizer that you just created out of your food scraps. All my food scraps, be it plant clippings, even those leftovers I forgot in the back of the fridge, can go into my garden, helping me grow more nutritious food at home. I learned that food waste makes up a huge portion of our personal carbon footprint. By reducing the amount of food I send to the landfill, I'm helping do my part for the planet. Now, whether you want to start making a positive environmental impact or, just like me, grow just a really beautiful garden, Lomi is perfect for you. Now, head to Lomi.com/Fred. Use the promo code FRED to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to LOMI.com/Fred. Use promo code FRED at checkout. Thank you to Lomi for sponsoring this episode. We appreciate your support. Did you know poor sleep causes weight gain, mood issues, poor mental health, and lower productivity? Sleep is the foundation of our mental and physical health and performance in our days, and having a consistent nighttime routine is non-negotiable. And let me tell you, when I don't get enough sleep, trust me, you do not want to be around me the next day. Introducing Beam Dream. We've been raving about Beam's Dream Powder, their healthy hot cocoa for sleep. And today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their best-selling healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. Now, here's the best part. It's available in some delicious seasonal flavors like cinnamon cacao, sea salt caramel, and white chocolate peppermint. Better sleep has really, honestly, never tasted better. Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, melatonin, and nano-CBD to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. A recent clinical study revealed that Dream helped 93% of users wake up feeling more refreshed, and 93% reported that Dream helped them get a more restful night's sleep. You just mix Beam Dream into hot water or milk, you stir or froth, and enjoy before bedtime. I personally tried Beam Dream, and it certainly lived up to the hype. It was delicious, and I had a really lovely nighttime routine with it. And second, and most importantly, honestly, it helped me fall asleep and stay asleep. Find out why Forbes and New York Times are all talking about Beam and why it's trusted by the world's top athletes and business professionals. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, take advantage of their biggest sale of the year. Get up to 50% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Fred. This discount's auto-applied at checkout, so you don't need to worry about the code. Just shop BEAM.com/Fred for up to 50% off this great seasonal sale. Man, Beam, thanks for being a sponsor of our show. All right, good catching up. Got some legal stuff. I'm diving into Ben's work and Popak, but I hope they're not jealous. Shan's a great guy, and I appreciate him taking time for us while he's on the road. Obviously, a lot of issues there. On the same time, we did talk about, I hope you catch the video we did about Project 2025. I'm going to do more of those. This project is really eye-opening. If you catch that video, it's blowing up because there's some really serious issues of taking away your rights, dismantling the government, scary stuff. So check that out when you get a chance. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that it's Veterans Day. Today, of course, Friday the 10th is Marine Corps birthday. Semper Fi Marines. If you know any Marines, they've already told you that. But, my dad was a Marine, and we had to celebrate the Marine Corps birthday every year. But, of course, the 11th is Veterans Day. I'm a veteran, as many of you obviously know. There's veteran stuff littered everywhere. I served 22 years in the Army, and so many of my brothers and sisters. And I remind you again, Veterans Day honors those who served, who live, right? Those the ones who have said your brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers, grandfathers who took on the uniform of the United States and served their nation, be it in combat or not. And a veteran is a veteran. Whereas Memorial Day, of course, Memorial Day is the day we honor those we lost and those who have fallen. But this is one for the living. So I try to be more positive about Veterans Day than I am about Memorial Day. And I have a good time for Veterans Day. And so we're going to go get that free bloomin' onion. You deserve it. I think there's some pretty good deals out there for Veterans Day. More importantly, national parks are free the entire day for any veteran who served. You can go on in to any national park in the country for free tomorrow. I'm going to take advantage of that right here in the Missouri area. I can't enjoy some of our national park, get some fresh air. So in the meantime, happy Veterans Day to all my fellow veterans and those who served. I'm a proud member of the military, service member. My family served literally since before there was a country. We had an ancestor in the French and Indian War. We had a Minuteman at the Boston Alarm. We fought all the way through the war. My father was in the World War II as a Marine, working on aircraft. So we've been in the service a long time. It's gone to my next generation. My son-in-law son-in-law serves, my son serves. So the military is that kind of a world. And so I hope if you know any veterans, let them know you appreciate their service and be positive about it, because a lot of us have some fond memories, hard memories. It is a tough business, but it's also pretty funny sometimes. So anyway, happy Veterans Day to all my fellow service members. In the meantime, you know where we are, right here on the Midas Touch Network every week, Friday night. You can get all of my little hot takes that I do. I've had several go out this week. You can find us on Substack. I'd love you to go on our Substack. It's really growing now fast. Had some really cool events. I had a Zoom last night with my friend Rachel Vimman on her Substack. That's fpwellman.substack.com. As always, I urge you, and I hope you'll come out and check out Forgotten Democrats. I'm very proud to be the national chairman of Forgotten Democrats, more so than ever right now. If you don't know about Speaker Mike Johnson, in the majority of his races for higher office, from state legislature to Congress, was unopposed. Unopposed. The majority of his election was unopposed or underopposed. And that's how we got a speaker who claims he doesn't have a bank account and yet owns property all over Louisiana, who is in Paris, France right now giving a speech, VIP treatment overseas instead of doing his job as Speaker of the House that he just got 3 weeks ago. These unvetted, untouched congressional members are the bane of our existence. So Forgotten Democrats is very simple. You join. It's a donation, a monthly donation is what our model is. And your money goes directly to these candidates. The majority of our money will go straight to be distributed among the candidates who need it the most first. So people in those races where they can't raise money, they're in tough places, they will get the money before anyone else, and then it goes up from there. So I'd love you to check it out. The easy way to join our email list is simply texting Fred to 33777, or you can go straight to forgottendemocrats.org and sign up and join. I'd love you to see you there. So it's great. We have fun events. We have one coming up next week. So with that, thanks for joining the show. As always, a great week. I love seeing you here. Say hi, and I'll see you next week right here on the Midas Touch Network.